It's outside the tent. I can hear it breathing. I think I'm the last one left. That's the final line in the journal we found. No name, no date, just a faint smear of dried mud and what looked like blood on the corner of the page. We were supposed to be 5 friends camping for the weekend, deep in the national forest. No service, no distractions, just firewood, cheap beer, and stories around the flames. That's what we told ourselves. But now I'm not even sure I went out there with anyone. The strange thing is, I remember all of us laughing the first night. We roasted marshmallows, played cards, talked about old high school memories. I even remember someone telling a scary story about something that lives in the woods, something that doesn't like being watched. We all laughed it off. But I swear, that night I heard a second group talking, laughing, whispering, just behind our tents. I thought it was just another group nearby, so I didn't check. But the next morning, when I counted the tents, something was wrong. There were 4. I could have sworn we brought 5, maybe even 6. No one else noticed, or maybe they forgot. That's when I found the journal, buried under a pile of leaves just outside the tree line. The entries started sane, grocery lists, campfire plans, but they grew darker, more frantic. Names were scribbled out, days skipped, and the last few pages were just the same line written over and over. Don't forget me, don't forget me, don't forget me. I think I did. I think we all did. And that's why I'm telling you this now, because something followed us back. And at night, when I try to sleep, I still hear it breathing. We hadn't seen each other in years. Not like this. Not all 5 of us together. No distractions, no screens, no pretending to be adults with jobs and responsibilities. Just 5 old friends piled into 2 beat-up cars, chasing the last bits of sunlight down a winding forest road that didn't even show up on Google Maps. It was Nathan's idea. He said we needed a reset. Out there, he told us, pointing to a crumpled map in a marked spot deep in a national forest reserve. No signal, no people, just us and the trees. The rest of us laughed, but we agreed. After everything, the stress, the breakups, the burnout, it sounded perfect. Like a little time capsule back to who we used to be. We blasted old music on the drive, the kind you only sing when no one else is around to judge you. There were snacks, bad jokes, and stories that started with "remember that time" and ended in wheezing laughter. For a while, it really did feel like we were kids again. Untouchable, invisible, free. By the time we reached the clearing, the sky had already started to bruise with dust. The air was cooler, quieter, too quiet. But none of us noticed then. We were too busy unloading gear, throwing tents together, debating who had forgotten the firewood. It was always Ryan, and swearing that the spot Nathan picked looked exactly like a horror movie opening. He just grinned. "That's the point," he said. When the fire finally crackled to life, it was perfect. Fireflies blinked in and out of the shadows like tiny stars. The forest around us felt endless. Our laughter echoed between the trees, swallowed up in the kind of night that only exists miles away from anything familiar. We passed around drinks, shared secrets, and dared each other to walk out into the trees with no flashlight. No one was brave enough. Somewhere in all of it, someone pointed out that we pitched 5 tents in a perfect semicircle. But when I looked, I counted 6. I shook it off, assuming someone doubled up or we just lost count in the chaos. That night, I remember thinking, this is what peace feels like. This is what friendship used to feel like. But I didn't know that something else had joined us. Something that didn't want us to remember who we were or how many of us had come. Setting up camp always felt like controlled chaos. Everyone had their own way of doing things. Layla with her color-coded pegs and mini broom to clean the tent floor, Ryan struggling to figure out which pole went where while cursing under his breath, and Marcus blasting music from a half-dead speaker while tossing his sleeping bag in a pile. I remember Nathan walking around with a beer in one hand and a flashlight in the other. acting like he was supervising some construction site. I was the last to pitch my tent. We formed a semicircle, just like Nathan suggested, facing the fire pit at the center. It looked good, balanced, cozy even. 5 tents, 5 friends. The fire was just starting to crackle as the light faded out of the trees. But later that night, something didn't sit right with me. It was after dinner, when we were sitting around the flames roasting marshmallows and telling dumb stories, that I looked around and counted again. 6 tents. I paused, did a slow sweep with my eyes. 1, 2, 3, 6. Definitely 6. I asked, half joking, "Hey, who brought an extra tent?" They looked at me, confused. Layla laughed. "What are you talking about?" I pointed. "There's one more than there should be. Look." Nathan squinted through the dark. "Maybe someone doubled up, or maybe we're just bad at counting after 2 beers. We all laughed it off, because that's what you do when you're deep in the woods and your mind plays tricks on you. You choose the easiest answer. Miscount. Mistake. Simple. We were too far from the world to believe in anything else. But even as we brushed it off, I kept glancing at the last tent, the one on the far edge. It looked the same as the others, sure. Same fabric, same shape, but there was something off, like it didn't belong to us. Like it had always been there, even before we arrived. Still, I let it go. I didn't want to ruin the vibe. The night was young, the fire warm, and everyone was happy. But hours later, when the fire burned low and we all crawled into our tents, I swear I saw the flap of that 6th tent moving. Just slightly, like something had just gone inside. The first night felt like a dream. The fire had died down to glowing embers, the wind was gentle, and the woods had finally gone quiet. The kind of quiet you only get when you're miles from everything. No city hum, no headlights, no buzzing phones. Just nature and us. One by one, everyone slipped into their tents, zipping up behind layers of canvas and nylon, voices fading with sleepy goodnights. I don't remember what time I woke up, only that it was still dark. Pitch black, except for the faint orange glow of coals outside. At first, I didn't know what had pulled me from sleep. Then I heard it, laughter. Faint, muffled, playful, like people whispering and giggling, trying not to wake the others. It was coming from tent number 4. I lay there listening, half asleep, smiling to myself. Probably Marcus and Layla messing around. Maybe Ryan had finally told one of his terrible ghost stories and they were losing it. It didn't bother me. If anything, it felt nice, comforting, familiar. That kind of closeness only old friends have. The dumb jokes and late-night whispers that only make sense to the people who were there. Eventually, the voices faded and I fell back asleep. Morning came with the smell of instant coffee and the rustle of a breakfast fire. Sunlight filtered through the trees, warm and gold. Everyone looked well-rested, happy. I yawned, stretched, and casually asked, "So who was up late in tent 4 last night?" They all looked at me like I was speaking another language. "Tent 4? Nathan asked. "Yeah," I said, pointing with my coffee mug. "The one near the pine. Someone was cracking up in there around 3 or 4. I heard it." Silence. Layla furrowed her brow. "I wasn't even awake. Were you?" Marcus shook his head. "I didn't leave my tent." Ryan just shrugged. "Dude, I slept like a rock." I looked again. Tent 4 stood exactly where it was. Closed, still, unused. I walked over and peeked inside. No sleeping bag, no gear, no footprints around it. Just the faint scent of cold fabric and damp earth. It was empty, completely untouched. And suddenly I didn't feel so far away from everything anymore. I felt watched. We waited until mid-morning to check the tent. None of us wanted to admit it, but we were all thinking the same thing. Something felt wrong. The laughter I'd heard the night before, the kind that had once felt harmless, now lingered in the air like a warning no one wanted to say out loud. Tent number 4 stood just slightly apart from the others. Not far, but far enough to feel disconnected. As if it had set itself up rather than being pitched by any of us. When we unzipped the flap, a wave of cold air spilled out. sharp and unnatural, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. The rest of the forest was warming under sunlight, but inside that tent, it was still night. We looked around, no signs of use. The floor was clean, undisturbed, no gear, no food wrappers, no sleeping bag, just emptiness and silence. Nathan muttered something about air pockets and shade, trying to explain away the cold, but his voice didn't have conviction. We were all trying to make it make sense. None of it did. As I knelt to take a closer look at the corners of the tent, I noticed something tucked beneath the folded fabric, a flash of brown, something weathered. I pulled it out. It was a journal. The leather cover was cracked, water-stained, and warped by time. Inside, the pages were torn and yellowed, covered in handwriting that started neat, then quickly descended into chaos. The ink was smudged in places. Some of the words looked like they'd been written with a trembling hand. I flipped to the last legible entry. We thought we came in a group of 5, but there were 6 of us. I read it again, then a third time. My throat went dry. I looked at the others. Does this mean anything to you? Layla paled. Are you saying someone else was with them? Marcus frowned. Or maybe someone wasn't supposed to be. Ryan's voice was barely a whisper. What if they forgot one of their own? I looked at our group, counted 1, 2, 4, 5. But suddenly I wasn't sure if that was the right number. Or worse, if one of us was never supposed to be here at all. It didn't happen all at once. It crept in slowly, like the way cold sets into your bones without you realizing until it's too late. First, it was Ryan. He started spacing out during conversations, staring at the trees like he was listening for something the rest of us couldn't hear. When we asked if he was okay, he'd smile, that kind of automatic, too slow smile that doesn't reach the eyes, and say he was just tired. But later, I caught him writing something in the dirt behind his tent, repeating the same phrase over and over. Which one is it? Layla had it worse. On the second night, she woke up screaming, said someone had been standing outside her tent, not moving, just watching her. When we asked what the person looked like, her face went pale. I don't know. I could see the face, but I couldn't describe it. It wasn't blurry, it wasn't hidden, but I can't hold it in my mind. She started crying. It looked like all of us. That night, no one slept. We started hearing things, whispering like someone circling the tents, mumbling things we couldn't quite catch, just on the edge of language. Then the heavy footsteps, slow, deliberate, like something walking in wide loops around us. Every time someone unzipped their tent to check, there was nothing there. No movement, no signs of life. And in the morning, no footprints, not even ours. The ground was perfectly smooth, like it had reset overnight. That's when the paranoia set in. Marcus snapped at Ryan over breakfast, accusing him of sneaking around at night. Ryan didn't respond, just stared at the fire like he didn't hear. Later, Nathan asked me if I remembered what town Layla was from. I did. Of course I did. But when I told him, he shook his head. No, that's not right. That's not what she said yesterday. He seemed genuinely afraid, like the truth was slipping through his fingers. I started watching them more closely, not just out of fear, but because something felt off. One of them was different, or maybe all of them were. And worst of all, I began to wonder, was it just them, or was I starting to change too? It was Marcus who suggested reviewing the drone footage. Just to clear the air, he said, after another argument broke out over the tents. This time, Nathan swore there had always been 5, while Ryan insisted he remembered seeing 6. Again, the tension was suffocating, like the trees themselves were pressing in. So Marcus pulled out his tablet, connected it to the drone, and loaded the very first video we shot when we arrived. We all leaned in around the flickering campfire, watching the screen glow against our faces. The drone hovered above the clearing, steady and smooth, capturing the golden hour light spilling through the trees. There we were, tiny figures moving around the campsite, unloading gear, setting up tents, and there were 6 of us, 6 distinct figures. We watched in silence as each person moved with purpose, laughing, gesturing. 1 by the car, 2 at the fire pit, 3 more arranging tents. The 6 stood slightly apart, just outside the circle of movement, like they didn't quite belong, but weren't entirely separate either. "Who is that?" Layla asked, her voice barely audible. Nathan leaned closer, pausing. Marcus froze the frame. The 6th figure stood with their back to the camera, just far enough that we couldn't make out a face. But the posture, the shape, there was something familiar and wrong about it at the same time. No one said anything for a long moment. Then the screen flickered. A glitch. Just a second. Static washed over the image like a ripple through water. Marcus tapped the side of the tablet. "What the hell?" When the video returned, the 6th figure was gone. We stared at the same moment in time, same angle, same lighting, but now only 5 of us moved in the clearing. The person by the edge had vanished entirely, as if they'd never been there. And yet, we'd all seen it. "No," Ryan whispered. "No, they were there. I saw them." Marcus tried scrubbing back, but the footage had changed. It was clean, unbroken, undeniable. And that's when I realized it wasn't just memory that was shifting. Time itself was coming undone, and something or someone was editing us out, one by one. It started subtly, a pause in conversation, a flicker of confusion in someone's eyes, the kind of lapse you'd normally laugh off, too little sleep, too much sun. But by the 3rd day, it couldn't be ignored. Layla was the first. We were sitting around the fire, eating quietly, when she suddenly looked up and said, "Wait, who's Alex?" At first we thought she was joking, but her face didn't match her words. It wasn't playfulness. It was genuine confusion. Fear. "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, half laughing. "Alex is right there." We all turned, but Alex's seat was empty, so was his tent. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked over. The flap was open. Inside, no sleeping bag, no clothes, nothing. Just a bare tent floor like no one had ever used it. But I remembered him. I remembered his voice, his terrible jokes, the way he always packed too much food and insisted on bringing that ridiculous metal mug. I remembered him helping me set up my tent the first night. I remembered. But Layla didn't. Neither did Marcus. Nathan sat there staring at the fire, saying nothing. Maybe he left, Ryan offered, but it sounded weak, empty. The thing was, we still had 5 people, 5 tents, 5 plates, 5 names, but not the same 5. Each night, someone else forgot a name, and each morning, someone's tent was empty, and no one talked about it. Like it was easier to pretend the empty space had always been there. I started writing names down in my journal, over and over. I read them aloud before I slept like a mantra, like a shield, because I knew what was coming. They were forgetting each other, forgetting themselves. And when you're forgotten here, you don't just disappear from memory. You vanish completely. No sound, no trace, not even a reaction. Just silence where laughter used to be, a space by the fire where someone used to sit. Even their footprints faded, like the forest itself was erasing them. And the worst part wasn't watching them go. It was knowing I was next. The fire was dying. Just 2 of us now, Nathan and me, sitting in silence, barely speaking, barely blinking. We didn't mention the others anymore. Their names felt fragile, like glass in our mouths, and saying them aloud only made their absence feel louder. I wasn't even sure how many we'd started with. 5, 6, sometimes I thought it was 4. Sometimes, none of us at all. Nathan went to his tent first, said he was exhausted, said he'd see me in the morning, but he wouldn't. I sat by the last of the glowing embers, clutching my journal like it was the only thing tethering me to the truth. I flipped through the pages, reading names over and over, writing my own at the bottom of each one. Because I was afraid that if I forgot myself, I'd vanish too. When I finally crawled into my tent, the woods were silent. Not peaceful, not calm, just empty, like every living thing had been wiped clean from the trees. Then I heard it, a sound so quiet it almost didn't register at first. breathing, not wind, not an animal. Breathing, slow, measured, right outside the tent wall. Each inhale long and patient, each exhale like it knew I was listening. I froze. My hand gripped the zipper, too afraid to pull it open, too afraid to see what stood just inches away. And then I felt it, something heavy settle inside my backpack. I reached back with shaking fingers and pulled out the journal. A new page had been added. The handwriting wasn't mine. It feeds on memory. If they forget you, you disappear. Don't let them forget you. The words pulsed on the page like a heartbeat. Outside, the breathing grew louder, closer, as if it could smell the ink, smell me. I wanted to scream for Nathan, but I couldn't remember if that was really his name. I wanted to run, but I didn't know which direction would lead out, or if there even was one anymore. And then, just beyond the tent fabric, I heard a voice I recognized, my own. It whispered, "Who are you?" And I realized I was already forgetting myself. I ran as soon as the sky began to change, that faint hint of gray before sunrise when shadows are weakest and hope still feels real. I didn't pack. I didn't call out. I didn't even look back. The trees clawed at my arms, thorns tore at my clothes, but I didn't stop, not once. I ran like something was chasing me, because something was. The woods seemed endless. No trails, no sounds, no wind, just that awful silence. The kind that pressed against your skull and made you doubt your own footsteps. But somehow, after hours or minutes, I can't remember, I saw it. A ranger station, rising from the trees like a memory I'd forgotten. I staggered to the porch and pounded on the door. It opened slowly, and a man in uniform blinked at me, coffee in hand. His face changed the moment he saw mine, pale, scraped, wild-eyed. He helped me inside, sat me down. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "What happened out there?" I tried to answer. My mouth was dry. My brain felt like it was full of smoke. He poured me water, waited patiently. "How many were in your group?" The question hit like a punch. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My mind reached into darkness and came back empty. I searched for names, for faces, for anyone. All I found was a dull ache behind my eyes. I looked up at him, confused. "Just me," I finally whispered. He stared at me, eyebrows furrowed, as if waiting for more. But I didn't have anything else to give. He nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "Let's get you some help." As he turned away, I caught a glimpse of the station's glass window. The early light behind me cast my reflection, and something else. 6 shadows, standing just behind the tree line, still, silent, watching. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just stared at the glass, heart pounding, breath frozen. Because maybe I'd escaped the forest, but they had followed me out. This story was submitted anonymously. No name, no return address, just a worn notebook wrapped in plastic, postmarked from a town that doesn't even show up on modern maps. We received it months after the alleged events. The pages were stained with mud, torn in places, some barely legible. But the fear was real, embedded in every shaky word, every scrawled sentence. What makes this story even stranger is what happened after we shared a portion of it online. In the comments section, someone came forward. They said they recognized the journal. They said it belonged to their older brother who went missing on a camping trip 10 years ago. A trip he took with 4 friends. A trip that was never supposed to happen. A trip that ended without answers, just empty tents, abandoned gear, and no signs of struggle. No sign of the people who once stood around that fire. The handwriting matched, they said. The phrases, "Don't forget me," there were 6 of us. Those were things their brother used to say as a child, back when he used to have night terrors. Things no one outside the family should have known. The person never posted again. Their account vanished. We tried tracking down the forest, using GPS coordinates mentioned in the story, satellite maps, ranger reports, but nothing came up. No permit records, no access roads. It was like the place didn't exist anymore, or never had. Some believe this was just a story, a well-crafted piece of fiction meant to scare and entertain. But then there are those who believe the opposite, They believe that some forests exist outside the boundaries of maps, outside the reach of memory, places that feed on forgetting, places that wait for people to wander in, and when they do, they never really leave, at least not in one piece. So the next time you go camping, count your friends carefully, write their names down. Remember who you came with, because if you forget even one, you might never come back at all. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's ghost story. See you in the next, even more thrilling stories. If possible, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support me in creating more ghost stories for you. Thank you so much. Goodbye, and see you again.